Cairo, a city of ancient wonders and modern aspirations, a place where the echoes of pharaohs mingled with the relentless hum of progress, was the perfect backdrop for Rafik Mansour's grand ambitions. He wasn't merely a real estate developer, he was an architect of ambition, a man who sculpted the city's skyline with a vision as sharp as the edges of his meticulously tailored suits. His name, Rafik Mansour, was synonymous with power, wealth, and a ruthless drive that had propelled him to the pinnacle of Cairo's business elite. His latest project, the Cairo Spire, a colossal structure of steel and glass designed to pierce the very heavens, was more than just another building. It was a symbol of his unwavering dominance, a physical manifestation of his relentless pursuit of legacy. It was to be his magnum opus, a beacon visible from every corner of the sprawling metropolis, a testament to his enduring impact on the city. Rafik's penthouse office, perched atop one of his older skyscrapers, offered a breathtaking panorama of his domain. From this strategic vantage point, he could survey the sprawling urban tapestry, a testament to his influence. The Nile, the lifeblood of Egypt, snaked its way through the concrete jungle, reflecting the shimmering skeletal frame of the spire, still under construction, like a promise of even greater things to come. The relentless Cairo sun beat down on the city, turning the air thick and heavy, but within the cool, air-conditioned confines of his office, Rafik remained undisturbed, his gaze fixed on the future, his mind already calculating the next move, the next acquisition, the next opportunity to expand his empire. His methods, while undeniably effective, were not always conducted in the full light of day. Whispers of backroom deals, strategically manipulated zoning regulations, and ruthlessly crushed competitors followed him like persistent shadows, a constant undercurrent to his meteoric rise. But Rafik paid little heed to whispers. He considered them the price of success, the murmurs of those left behind, unable to keep pace with his relentless drive. Results were all that mattered. He operated on the unwavering principle that the ends justified the means, a philosophy that had served him exceptionally well, propelling him to the forefront of Cairo's business world. He surrounded himself with a carefully selected inner circle of loyal lieutenants, men who understood the unspoken rules of the game and were willing to play by them, no questions asked. Among them was General Farid, a retired military man whose extensive and discreet connections within the city's complex and often opaque bureaucracy proved invaluable. Farid was a man of few words, his loyalty not bought with mere monetary compensation, but with a deep sense of respect, the promise of continued influence within Rafik's expanding empire, and a shared understanding of the delicate balance of power within the intricate web of Cairo's political and economic landscape. One particularly sweltering afternoon, as Rafik meticulously reviewed the latest blueprints for the Spire's opulent penthouse suite, a space designed to be the very epitome of luxury and exclusivity, a symbol of the heights of success that could be achieved within his empire, Farid entered his office, his usually stoic face etched with a rare look of unease. The subtle shift in his demeanor was enough to immediately capture Rafik's attention. "Rafik Bey," he began, his voice low and measured, betraying the weight of his words. "There is a matter that requires your immediate and discreet attention." Rafik looked up from the blueprints, his brow furrowed in a slight frown. He disliked interruptions, especially when his focus was laser-sharp on the spire, the project that consumed his every waking thought, the culmination of his life's work. "What is it, Farid?" he asked, his voice crisp and demanding, betraying a hint of impatience. "Make it concise." "A woman," Farid said, hesitating for a fraction of a second as if carefully choosing his words. "She has been making inquiries about some old business." The phrase hung in the air, heavy with unspoken implications, a dark cloud momentarily obscuring the bright vision of the spire. Rafik's eyes narrowed, his gaze sharpening, his mind instantly racing through a Rolodex of past deals, past acquisitions, past confrontations. "Old business?" he repeated, his voice laced with suspicion, a subtle warning underlying his words. "What precisely are you referring to, Farid? Be specific." Farid explained, with his usual military precision, that a woman by the name of Zara Hassan had been observed in the company of individuals known to be associated with several of Rafik's past acquisitions. Acquisitions that had been contentious, to put it mildly. These were deals that had involved the displacement of families from their ancestral homes, the demolition of historical buildings to make way for modern, profitable developments, and the careful, sometimes borderline, legal navigation of a legal landscape that often blurred the lines between legitimate business practices and exploitation. They were the carefully buried skeletons in Rafik's meticulously maintained closet, the ghosts of his past that he had hoped would remain forever undisturbed, buried beneath the foundations of his ever-growing empire. A cold knot tightened in Rafik's stomach. He had always been meticulous in covering his tracks, leaving no loose ends, ensuring that every transaction was documented and legally sound, at least on the surface. But even the most cautious and meticulous man could overlook a seemingly insignificant detail, a loose thread that, if pulled, could unravel the entire tapestry of his carefully constructed world. "What is her objective?" he asked, his voice hardening, the steel returning to his tone, a clear indication that the gloves were about to come off. "What does she want? Money, recognition, or something more personal?" "We are uncertain of her precise motives," Farid replied, his gaze unwavering, his expression remaining neutral, giving nothing away. "But she has been seen carrying a briefcase. We have strong reason to believe it contains documents. Potentially incriminating documents." The mere thought of incriminating documents falling into the wrong hands sent a shiver of unease, quickly masked by a steely resolve, down Rafik's spine. The spire, his legacy, his masterpiece, the culmination of his life's work, could be jeopardized, its gleaming facade tarnished by the shadows of his past. He wouldn't allow that to happen. He had come too far, sacrificed too much, to let some woman from his past derail his grand vision. "Locate her," he commanded, his voice now sharp and decisive, leaving no room for argument or interpretation. "Find her and ascertain the extent of her knowledge, and if she possesses anything of a compromising nature, it must be addressed, discreetly, permanently." Farid nodded curtly, his expression unreadable, and turned to leave the office, his footsteps echoing in the sudden, charged silence. Rafik remained standing at the window, his gaze fixed on the city below, the setting sun casting long, dramatic shadows across the urban landscape. The spire, still under construction, stood tall against the darkening sky, a symbol of his ambition, now potentially threatened by the resurfacing of his past. He knew, with a chilling certainty, that this was more than just a minor inconvenience, a fleeting problem to be dealt with swiftly. This was a declaration of war, a war he had no choice but to fight and win. The stakes were too high, the potential consequences too devastating. The whispers Zara had strategically planted began to ripple through the polished veneer of Cairo's elite circles, spreading like wildfire through the interconnected networks of business, politics, and media. News outlets, both local and international, began to pick up on the initially vague, yet increasingly persistent, allegations of corruption and illicit activities surrounding the Spire project. Rafik, a man accustomed to meticulously controlling every facet of his public image and the narratives surrounding his business dealings, found himself abruptly on the defensive, forced to react rather than dictate. The carefully crafted image of a successful businessman, a benefactor of the city, a modern-day pharaoh building monuments to his own greatness, began to crack under the pressure of mounting scrutiny. He intensified his efforts to locate Zara, deploying Farid and his extensive network of informants to scour the city, leaving no stone unturned in their desperate search. But Zara proved to be frustratingly elusive, a master of disguise and deception, moving through the city's labyrinthine streets and hidden alleyways like a phantom. She utilized a network of safe houses, communicated through encrypted channels and burner phones, and employed a series of disguises that made her virtually unrecognizable. She was always one step ahead of Rafik's men, a ghost haunting the edges of his empire, a constant reminder of his past sins and the impending reckoning. The pressure on Rafik continued to escalate. Investors, sensing the shifting tides of public opinion and fearing the potential damage to their own reputations, grew increasingly wary, hesitant to commit further funds to the Spire project. Banks, previously eager to lend to the seemingly infallible tycoon, began to hesitate, delaying the release of crucial funding, citing concerns over the ongoing investigations. The city council, under increasing pressure from the media and the public, launched an official investigation into the Spire's permits, approvals, and construction contracts, threatening to halt the project altogether. Rafik's carefully constructed world, built on a foundation of wealth, influence, and intimidation, began to crumble under the weight of Zara's calculated campaign. He felt the phantom weight of her presence, her unseen hand tightening around his throat, slowly choking the life out of his ambitions. In a desperate attempt to regain control of the narrative and quell the growing storm of negative publicity, Rafik decided to confront the allegations head-on. He organized a high-profile press conference at the Spire construction site, standing before the unfinished monument, the skeletal frame of his threatened legacy looming behind him like a stark reminder of his precarious position. He vehemently denied all accusations of wrongdoing, portraying himself as a victim of a malicious smear campaign orchestrated by jealous competitors seeking to undermine his success. He spoke with his usual charisma and conviction, attempting to reassure investors, appease the public, and regain the trust that was rapidly slipping away. But Zara had anticipated his move. She had been preparing for this moment, meticulously planning her counter-strategy. As Rafik spoke to the assembled journalists, cameras flashing and microphones recording his every word, a series of anonymous documents were leaked to the press, each one more damaging and incriminating than the last. These weren't just vague allegations or unsubstantiated rumors. They were concrete proof of Rafik's illegal activities. Falsified land deeds bearing his forged signature, detailed records of bribes paid to corrupt officials, and even disturbing evidence of intimidation and violence employed against those who dared to oppose him. The press conference descended into chaos. Reporters, initially respectful and attentive, bombarded Rafik with accusatory questions, their tone shifting from polite inquiry to aggressive interrogation. Rafik, usually so composed and in control, visibly struggled to maintain his composure as the carefully constructed facade he had cultivated for so long began to crumble before his very eyes. The cameras captured every flicker of doubt, every bead of sweat, every sign of his growing panic, broadcasting his unraveling to the world. Meanwhile, Zara continued her meticulous and methodical work, systematically targeting Rafik's closest allies and associates. She began to feed carefully curated information to law enforcement agencies, providing them with irrefutable evidence of their involvement in Rafik's various schemes and illegal operations. One by one, his carefully cultivated network of support began to unravel like threads pulled from a tapestry. General Farid, sensing the rapidly shifting tides of power and realizing the gravity of the situation, began to discreetly distance himself from Rafik, sensing that the tide had irrevocably turned against his former benefactor. The unspoken pact between them, based on mutual benefit and shared influence, was dissolving in the face of impending disaster. Rafik, increasingly isolated and desperate, finally realized the full extent of the danger he was in. He understood that he was losing control, that the carefully constructed edifice of his empire was on the verge of collapse. He knew that he had to confront Zara directly, to put an end to this relentless game of cat and mouse once and for all. Through his remaining loyal contacts, he managed to track her down to a secluded, nondescript apartment in the old city, a place where she had been lying low, carefully avoiding detection. He arrived at the apartment late at night, accompanied by a small, hand-picked group of his most trusted and ruthless men. The building was dark and silent, the only sound the distant hum of the city, a constant reminder of the world he was rapidly losing control of. He personally kicked down the door to Zara's apartment, bursting in with his men, ready to face his nemesis, to silence the ghost that had been haunting him for so long. But the apartment was empty. Zara was gone, having anticipated his move yet again. He felt a surge of frustration and anger, a sense of being constantly outmaneuvered, outsmarted by a woman he had initially underestimated. On a small table in the center of the sparsely furnished room, he found a single object, a faded photograph of himself, taken years ago, standing proudly in front of a building that he had subsequently demolished to make way for one of his early, less glamorous projects. The building, he remembered with a jolt of recognition, had been Zara's family home. The photograph was a stark and chilling reminder of the personal pain he had inflicted, the devastating destruction he had wrought in his relentless and single-minded pursuit of power and wealth. He felt a fleeting pang of guilt, a momentary flicker of remorse, quickly extinguished by a surge of renewed anger and a desperate determination to protect what was left of his empire. He had been played, outmaneuvered, humiliated by a woman driven by revenge. He knew with a chilling certainty that this was not the end. This was merely the beginning of the final act, the culmination of a long and bitter struggle. Zara had made it unequivocally clear that she would not rest until his empire was reduced to rubble, until he had paid in full for the crimes he had committed. And Rafik, cornered, desperate, and with nothing left to lose, was prepared to fight to the bitter end, regardless of the cost. The stakes were higher than ever before. It was no longer just about the spire, about his legacy, about his wealth. It was about his very survival. The empty apartment, with only the faded photograph as a haunting reminder of Zara's presence, became a turning point for Rafik. The game of cat and mouse had escalated into a full-blown war, and he knew he was fighting for his very survival. The initial panic had subsided, replaced by a cold, calculating resolve. He was no longer just protecting his empire, he was fighting to avoid complete ruin and potential imprisonment. He doubled down on his efforts to discredit Zara, attempting to paint her as a vengeful, unstable woman driven by personal vendettas. He used his remaining influence in the media to spread disinformation, attempting to muddy the waters and create doubt about the authenticity of the evidence she had presented. But the damage had been done. The public's trust was shattered, the investigations were gaining momentum, and his allies were deserting him like rats leaving a sinking ship. Zara, meanwhile, continued her relentless campaign, focusing on the legal front. She provided the authorities with meticulously compiled dossiers of evidence, leaving no room for doubt about Rafik's illegal activities. The investigations intensified, leading to raids on his offices, the seizure of his assets, and the arrest of several of his key associates. The Spire project, once a symbol of his ambition, was now a symbol of his impending downfall, a monument to his hubris. The climax of their conflict played out against the backdrop of the unfinished spire. Rafik, desperate and cornered, made a final desperate gamble. He arranged a clandestine meeting with Zara at the spire construction site, high up on one of the unfinished floors, hoping to negotiate a settlement, to buy her silence, or, if necessary, to eliminate her. Zara, anticipating his move, agreed to the meeting. She knew it was a trap, but she also knew it was her chance to finally bring him to justice. She arrived at the spire alone, but she had alerted the authorities, who were waiting in the shadows, ready to move in at her signal. The meeting was tense and fraught with emotion. Rafiq offered Zara a substantial sum of money in exchange for her silence, promising to disappear and leave Cairo forever. But Zara refused. She wasn't interested in money. She wanted justice. She wanted him to pay for his crimes. As their argument escalated, Rafiq's desperation grew. He realized that he had no way out, that his empire was crumbling around him, and that he was facing the prospect of spending the rest of his life in prison. In a moment of blind rage, he lunged at Zara, attempting to silence her permanently. But Zara was prepared. She had anticipated his move and was ready to defend herself. A struggle ensued, a desperate fight for survival high above the city. Just as Rafiq was about to overpower her, the authorities stormed the scene, apprehending him and taking him into custody. The twist. As Rafiq was being handcuffed, Zara revealed a crucial detail. She wasn't just motivated by revenge for her family's displacement. It turned out that her father, a renowned architect, had originally conceived the design for what became the Cairo Spire. Rafiq had stolen his plans, erasing her father's name from history and building his own empire on her family's stolen legacy. Her quest wasn't just about exposing his corruption. It was about reclaiming her father's rightful place in history. The documents she had compiled not only detailed Rafiq's illegal activities, but also contained the original blueprints and architectural notes proving her father's authorship of the spire's design. Rafiq Mansour's arrest marked the definitive end of his reign. His empire, built on deceit and exploitation, crumbled swiftly. Investigations revealed a complex web of corruption that reached into the highest echelons of Cairo's business and political circles. Many of his associates faced similar fates, their careers and reputations shattered. The Spire project, now irrevocably tainted by scandal, was temporarily halted, its future uncertain. However, Zara's meticulously gathered evidence didn't just expose Rafiq's crimes, it also revealed the truth about the Spire's origins. The original blueprints, architectural notes, and personal correspondence uncovered by Zara irrefutably proved that her father, a respected but often overlooked architect, had conceived the initial design. Rafiq had not only stolen the plans, but had systematically erased her father's contribution, claiming the design as his own. The city council, recognizing the profound injustice, made a public apology to Zara and her family. They announced that the spire would be completed, not as a monument to Rafiq's ambition, but as a tribute to her father's genius. The construction resumed, but with a renewed purpose. The design was subtly altered to reflect some of her father's original, more artistic visions, which Rafiq had initially dismissed as impractical. A prominent plaque was installed at the base of the spire, bearing her father's name and acknowledging his rightful place as the true architect. The grand opening of the Cairo Spire was a momentous occasion. Zara stood proudly beside city officials and members of the architectural community, finally seeing her father's vision realized. The building, once a symbol of corruption and greed, now stood as a beacon of justice and a testament to the enduring power of truth. The lights of the spire illuminated the Cairo skyline, not as a reminder of Rafiq's fallen empire, but as a tribute to a forgotten artist whose legacy had finally been restored. Zara, looking up at the towering structure, felt a sense of closure, not of revenge, but of justice served, and her father's name finally etched in stone for all time. The stolen legacy was returned, not with bitterness, but with a quiet dignity that echoed through the city. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more videos.